Well, howdy there, folks. James from politicalfriar.com coming at you again. This video is a request. Fine viewer Robert asked me to talk about Clarence Thomas and the big gifts that he's received from a guy named Harlan Crow and what effect that might have on his decisions and what we might do about it if we find it's a bit ugly. I mean, we, as in the American people or the American political system. Obviously, the watchers of this YouTube video aren't going to do much about Clarence Thomas, but we can talk about it and we can try to understand what's going on a little bit. So let's start by detailing what Clarence Thomas has received from Harlan Crow and who Harlan Crow is. First, Harlan Crow, he's a Texas real estate billionaire. He's extremely conservative, has been a big donor to Republican causes for a long, long time, giving millions and millions and millions of dollars over the years for right wing causes, Tea Party organizations, Republican candidates for government. And it makes sense considering the business he's in. He would probably prefer the Republicans' governing philosophy. It's in his interests. We shouldn't be surprised by the idea that this gentleman uses his money to advance government policies that will benefit him. That's not even necessarily a bad thing. That is kind of how a pluralistic society is supposed to work. But when it starts going such a concentrated way to one individual, especially a Supreme Court justice, somebody who can't get voted out, it raises eyebrows. So, what did he give Thomas? Well, according to the ProPublica report, which gathered a bunch of data that's just open, out in the open, photos that Clarence Thomas posted, or interviews with crew members on a yacht. Clarence Thomas has probably got, call it, a dozen big vacations with Harlan Crow. He's been to Indonesia, Greece, New Zealand, all on this yacht that Crow owns named the Michaela Rose. Those vacations, they suspect each one of them cost about $500,000 if Clarence Thomas had actually paid for it himself. So call it $6 million or so in benefit to Clarence Thomas. Lots of trips to other resorts and up to the Hamptons and elsewhere, always with Harlan Crow. I mean, they do go together. This isn't just a straight "hey, go have fun" sort of thing. They're traveling together. They're hanging out together. Crow gave $1 million or so to a Tea Party PAC that employed Ginny Thomas, Clarence's wife, sent her a salary of $120,000. Not a direct payment, but money's fungible. Uh, Clarence Thomas his mom basically lives in a house rent free. That's one of the more direct benefits. I guess it's going to his mom, but hey, I look after my mom. I appreciate that. It's a painting for Yale Law School that of Clarence and Ginny that Harlan commissioned for $105,000. Statue of Thomas's eighth grade teacher. Lots of stuff, lots of money flowing from Harlan to Clarence. And so what? Well, the obvious so what is Harlan has interests that come up before the Supreme Court, at least indirectly. He actually hasn't had a case himself come up to the Supreme Court since Thomas has been on the bench. But there are issues that he would prefer Thomas go one way or the other on inevitably. Yeah, that's going to happen. I mean, here's the thing. There's no law against a Supreme Court justice having a friend, and there's no law against a Supreme Court justice having a rich friend, and there's no law against the Supreme Court justice going on his rich friend's preferred vacations. We have a causation question. Whether the largesse from Harlan Crow caused any change in Clarence Thomas's decisions. It's probably impossible to tell. The thing is, these two guys almost certainly naturally agree on things. Is it at all? Is it possible that Harlan Crow's friendship with Thomas has moved Thomas's viewpoints closer to Crow's? Yeah, probably. That's what friends do. Friends regularly influence each other. Is that bribery? Is that connected to money? Or is that just how friends interact? Boy, teasing that particular causation question apart is hard. And I can't do it, and I don't have enough information to. I don't think anybody does. I don't think Clarence Thomas could possibly. The inner workings of his own mind are probably sufficiently difficult to figure that one out. So the real issue here is it looks bad. It erodes public confidence in Clarence Thomas to have him be accepting gifts from an interested party at this size. It's this big a gift. This isn't a steak dinner in Washington, D.C. while they're hanging out together. This is stuff that's valued in millions of dollars. And I know millions of dollars is not the same thing to a guy like Harlan Crow as it is to the regular people, but the Supreme Court works on its reputation. It has no army to enforce its rulings, and so anything that chips away at its reputation, fair or not, is harmful. It just it doesn't help the country. It's a bit of a betrayal of the trust that we put into a Supreme Court justice to be a bit of a high priest of democracy and not subject to this type of reproach. But nonetheless, I went through the decisions that Clarence Thomas made that might have had any kind of effect on Harlan's business over the last couple of years, and I didn't see anything that jumped out to me. Thomas pretty much voted how I thought he'd vote. I mean, you just look at the issue statement on these cases, the question posed, and I can guess how Clarence Thomas would vote on them, and I was pretty much right. I can't think that if his history was consistent with his decision making, that a lot of this largesse had an effect on his actual rulings from the bench. But what if they did? Let's just imagine for a moment that Clarence Thomas has been accepting bribes. Well, there's only one thing you can do. See, Clarence Thomas is an Article 3 officer. That means that he is not subject to being fired by Congress except through a very specific process, and that's called impeachment. You could impeach him. That requires a majority vote in the House, a trial in the Senate, and a two-thirds majority uh, vote to convict. And that would remove Clarence Thomas from office. There is basically nothing else that we can do. And based on the evidence that I've seen, this just is ugly. It tastes bad, but it doesn't at all justify impeachment. Yes, the Supreme Court could and should adopt some more rules about what type of gifts are ethical, not illegal, but ethical to accept. And I know that Kagan and Roberts and others are open to that. At the moment, Alito and Thomas seem to not be open to that. And they tend to not want to make rules by majority in the Supreme Court. They really do want to have a consensus. And so the chances are we're not going to get anything new. There are rules about disclosures, and Clarence Thomas probably failed to disclose a lot of these trips because you're just supposed to disclose when you pay for your when you don't pay for your own transportation. And hey, yacht trips are technically transportation, right? So there's a problem there. And Justice Roberts, as Chief Justice, could discipline Thomas for that, and maybe has. They wouldn't tell us if he had. That would also erode the confidence in the court in a weird way. They try to keep their cards close to their vest there in the Supreme Court, and it's all about prestige. Because in the end, the court relies on prestige to have power. Anyway, it's just some thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hit that like button. That's how people find these videos. If you don't do it, others won't find these videos. Subscribe, share it with a friend, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.